Hey everyone, welcome to Super Switch Heads, the premier Nintendo podcast in all of the internet. My name is Matthew.
My name is David.
My name is Patrick.
And this week we have special guest, Rob Gagnon.
Hello, I'm Rob Gagnon.
Hello, what's up?
How are you?
I didn't know I was getting applause.
Oh, we like to make people feel welcome here.
Wow, this is great.
You look very nice today.
Thank you,
You're
fellas.
welcome. Yeah.
Everyone's looking tip-top in this room.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing the show. Yeah, Rob, we were going to have you on earlier, but then you have scheduling issues with Tuesday nights, and then David was in the hospital.
Yeah, you were the problem, Rob.
Yeah, not David's legs.
Just a little bit of, not my inability to move. But it's a little bit of inside baseball for you guys.
Honor to be here. Very happy.
Very happy to have you here, especially because we hear you're moving away from Austin, and I'm sad about that.
It is,
but I'm happy for you.
I'm happy for me too. We're very excited, but it's also one of those things where we've started to appreciate Austin more and more. Like where usually we would sleep in, we'd be like, "Oh, let's get up and kind of like go do something." And so it's invigorated us. Yeah. But we still, after like having an active morning, we'd be like, "All right, I'm gonna watch you play South Park: Stick of Truth for 2 hours." Yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah. Well, I, for one, can't wait for you to leave.
Oh, Davey!
Oh, I keyed.
And if you're listening, we hope you don't leave because this episode, our focus is on roguelikes and roguelites, as well as we're going to discuss some GDQ and get into some rumors. But without further ado...
Real quick, I did want to give a shout out to Brandon McKay, who is a Switch head and now is an official Switch head. He's a coworker of mine that's been listening to the podcast, and he finally broke down and bought a Switch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's nice to be an influence.
He just posted on our Facebook group on the Mario Maker.
Yeah, was Brandon
thread.
the one that was like, I purchased Mario Maker 2,
yeah,
and then I purchased the Switch?
We got him on.
Hell yeah.
So... We are the premier Nintendo podcast.
We're the Nintendo evangelists, basically, of the internet.
But GDQ, like we talked about last week. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen now, and then go watch some GDQ, and then come back, or do that in a different order. Listen to
any
this
order
first.
is fine, honestly.
But GDQ, Games Done Quick, is happening right now, June 23rd through the 30th. You guys been watching? It's only been a couple days.
Yeah, I spent a lot of today and yesterday watching it. I'm spending a lot of time on the couch in general, but it's been great. You got any highlights that you've been enjoying so far? Any cool runs?
I only got a chance to watch some today when I kind of had work I could do while that was on, and I mostly watched the Castlevania stuff.
Yeah,
and that was entertaining to just watch how ridiculously overpowered they are.
Yeah.
So quickly.
Yeah.
Like how game breaking it is for people that figure out, oh, if I go get this relic or whatever first, I can just walk through every boss. Basically,
yeah, they were doing the Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and the category was all bosses and relics and save Richter, or what was it? It was ABRSR. They were like, this is the ABRSR run. Like, that one was really fun. I saw a great one last night. Well, I guess this morning. I woke up at 6 a.m. this morning, couldn't get back to bed. And so I put on GDQ, and I was watching this Marble Madness run for the NES. And basically it was like a 2-player co-op run, and they beat it in like 3.5 minutes. And then the guy comes out, like one of the guys, he's like, well, I can also do this. And then he like took the second controller and flipped it upside down. So he was holding basically 2 controllers in his hand with his thumb on both directional pads, and he was playing with both characters at once, both marbles at once.
But one inverted.
But one was inverted. So up was down, down was up, left was right, right was left. And he was able to beat it in like 4.5 minutes, like just by himself.
That's like watching one person dance to DDR.
Yeah, it was insane. Yeah, on like the 2 pads or whatever.
Yeah, on the 2 pads.
Yeah.
I remember playing that game when I was a kid and not being very good at it. It's like watching somebody beat Marble Madness in 3 minutes is just infuriating.
Also, real quick, I just want to say I had a pretty existential I'm old moment. I was watching a Final Doom run with my sister, and my sister, she's 10 years younger than me, and she was watching the run with me, and she was like, this game looks like Minecraft. I was like, God damn it.
Right?
I watched yesterday, and I watched Sonic Generations, and a couple people play Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland, GB Game Boy Advance game.
Yeah, I watched that one too.
There are like those players who play that, they're part of the Moon Crew is the name.
The Moon Crew.
Yeah, I gave a shout out on the Instagram because they were like optimistic and positive.
Oh, that's nice.
It was like incredible. It like blew my mind.
Also, not surprising for Kirby fans. Like
Yeah, that's right. They did say how cute Kirby is over and over.
I would love to meet a bunch of nihilistic Kirby fans.
But like the thing I realized is that speedrunning is so pinpoint precise that one mess up will mess up the entire run.
Yeah.
You've wasted 51 minutes of your life.
Yeah.
And these, everyone there, were like remained positive and like encouraged each other. I was like, holy shit, this is incredible.
Yeah.
You'd think that like all these people that are into it too are probably not used to being on a stage. You know what I mean? Like, so the added pressure of doing it in front of everybody, these people who were just mastered this game by sitting in their dark bedroom or whatever, you know? Like,
Suddenly under the lights and everything. It's nice. And the crowd is really supportive. Like, even if they fuck up, like,
People
you know,
clap.
eventually when they get it right, even if it was like a major fuck up and they fucked up like over and over and over again, once they finally get it right, everybody applauds, you know, and you can
Yeah.
see it's like, that kind of gives them the energy to keep going, you know? It's such a
Everyone's
nice thing.
been a loser at some point. Let's cheer each other on.
It might as well be in front of 135,000 people on Twitch.
Yeah, why not?
I was encouraged, is what I'm saying.
Cool, yeah, let's get on to some news.
yeah, so the National Purchase Diary NPD numbers came out. That's U.S. numbers for hardware, among other things. But I honestly was going to say this might be the last time we talk about this for a while because the Switch is ahead, and that's probably going to be the case until next gen. The Switch is going to be selling better, especially if there's new Switch models, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
And it's projected to be the best seller for the entire year as well, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Not surprising.
It's very exciting. It just is.
It's nice for Nintendo to be back on top.
It
I
is.
love it.
Yeah.
It feels like it's almost bought them another like we could screw up something,
And they will.
and they will. Yeah, but that's where they get their ambition from. I love it. I'm so happy to
It's
see.
especially
them.
nice after the failure of the Wii U. You know what I mean? It's like finally, yeah, it's like we always believed in them.
Enjoy this. Let's enjoy this.
Exactly.
So, more Breath of the Wild sequel stuff. Aonuma told Kotaku, who I guess was holding on to this to get more clicks, when they were at E3, that sort of the way that the sequel came about was they were planning to do more DLC, or they just had so many ideas for DLC that they decided at some point, let's just do a new game. So that combined with this next little thing, kind of makes you think, well, they may have actually been talking about this for a really long time. Then you think about when the DLC came out for Breath of the Wild,
Like the Master Quest stuff. and
yeah,
stuff like that.
the expansion pass. I don't remember when. I should have looked that up, but it was
It was like a year ago at this
Sometime
point, at least. Yeah.
late 2017, maybe.
By the time it finished rolling out, it was about a year ago, I think.
Yeah.
Because I had just come late to the game on that.
So, and then also we found out that, and I don't know how to say this, it's one of the development studios, Grezzo, is
Grezzo.
Grezzo is handling the Link's Awakening remake, so it's not the standard Nintendo Zelda team. So that again, you might have thought, well, they're making that Link's Awakening game. They couldn't have been putting too much into this.
Right,
but-
and Grezzo is the studio that basically did the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask ports for the 3DS, and those were done really, really well. And so I'm excited about that, and I think the quality is going to be really good on this port. And also it kind of proves my theory that I think this was originally going to be a 3DS game. You know what I mean?
Well,
And
I
then it
think
was, like, moved
we're
over
seeing
to the
all the
Switch.
3DS and console development teams now working at the same time for the same system. So it's kind of interesting to see how that shakes out and what games look like and who gets what now.
For sure. Something about the just going back a little bit to the Breath of the Wild 2 stuff. I think just the fact that this was originally going to be a DLC and that they've probably already been working on this for at least a year, right? If like that the final DLC came out at least a year ago. I think we're
was
going to be
more than
seeing
that.
this. Yeah, maybe even more
It
than
was
that.
because I bought, well, now that I say that, I bought the like complete expansion pass in like March of 2018. So it was already out by then.
Right,
All the DLC.
Like a year since it was released.
Yes.
So I think basically I think that we're going to be seeing this holiday next year. I don't think we're going to have to wait too long. I think they're already like well underway on it. And if they're already using a bunch of the assets from the original game, that's way less work they have to do. I don't think we're going to be waiting too long to play this game.
And in the trailer that they played at E3, it had those sort of floaty rune letters, and allegedly, if we can trust the people who on 4chan looked up the Garuda language.
I trust 4chan with my life.
Oh, okay. They translated this Garuda language, and apparently it says Seal Ganon in that floaty green letters that fly by. So if there was any doubt left about what's happening there, there's no more. So, but that's cool that they put so many little Easter eggs in this.
Yeah.
If that's true too, like that words backwards and actually made it spell stuff. They put a lot of time into that.
Cool that fans know a made up language.
Yeah.
It's like we're like all Tolkien
speaking
up
in
in
Klingon or something. So other E3 news. So this is kind of funny because Polygon put out this article. They're sort of Luigi's Mansion 3. Like they played it at E3 and, this is their impressions and all that. But this has been making the rounds because they had they actually asked Bill Trinan at E3 about the release date. And they had this little scoop, which has been on the internet for a while, but all of a sudden everybody's found it and sharing it on all the Nintendo news sites. But anyway, point is they asked Bill Trinan about when, why is it just 2019? And he said that Next Level Games is the developer of that, by the way. And I think they did the second
they
Luigi's
did Dark Moon as well.
Mansion game. And their Canadian studio, I believe. They are putting a lot of the care in the game, and that Nintendo wants to let them do that and just kind of waiting on them to let them know when it's ready. And then they'll give us the release date. So I guess that probably means they're looking at slot A or B, depending on that, right? Like, I mean,
between two like kind of open slots
like,
for releasing games.
Probably October and December, right?
Right.
Like, is what everybody's saying. That makes sense because those don't have a whole lot of Nintendo games in there.
Is this like a compassion move, do we think? Like for the developers and everything so they're not doing all this ridiculous abusive overtime hours?
I hope so.
I think so. We kind of talked about that last week with Animal Crossing, because they're doing that with that.
And their
as well.
stock took a hit.
Right.
Yeah.
I imagine so. I think it's good because, that first year that the Switch was out, they were hitting every single release date that they set out there, right? Mm-hmm. For better or for worse. Usually for better. I mean, I think most of the games were pretty feature complete when they came out. But it's I think now that they've gotten the trust of the release dates that they've hit already, they're a little more lax and they're a little more okay with delays now at this point.
Well, and they haven't promised us anything other than 2019. I mean, they might push it back, I guess, which would be fine with me. But that probably means it's almost done, but they're fine tuning some things and adding some things. And if it takes a little longer than they think, then they're going to probably push it to December or something. That's what
they better not embarrass me like that. Not after all this big talk. No, Nintendo, they're good people.
Good police, Nintendo.
So we have been talking about Switch revisions, new Switch models coming out. So shout out to Cody Corduroy, our resident music maker. I can't talk right now.
Made our theme.
I think resident music maker.
Is that okay? Thanks, guys.
He does the theme at the beginning and end of the show.
Thanks for the support. He posted a link to a BGR article about how they're on our Facebook page, I should say, about how there's some Chinese accessory manufacturer called Hanson, I think, that was listing some Switch Mini accessories, and they were using fan art as or mock-ups that people have made on the internet as the Switch Mini. So that was kind of well, I don't know if I believe this. Though they did have one image that I don't think we'd seen before, or at least was as popular.
And this was for specifically Switch Mini accessories. So
correct.
Screen protectors, game holders.
Which is weird. Are the games different? But it's are the game cartridges different?
You slap a mini
on there and everybody
there,
wants to buy it.
Resell it. Yeah. But it's that second render that you were talking about, there's one that was for a clear protective case for the Switch Mini. And there was a render we had not seen before. They'd used the fan art mock-ups for it, most of the products, but the other one, it was a model for the Switch Mini that looked pretty legit. And the plastic cover for it fit perfectly with the actual system with all the vents and stuff that were on it.
Looked like a phone case. Kind of,
yeah.
Or the phone case that you just put on the back of your phone,
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think that anybody thinks that the Switch Mini is not coming at this point with all the buzz that we've heard about it from really reputable sources. But and this definitely seals the nail in the coffin.
The UK video game retailer Game on their Spanish site did the same thing. They had some listings for Switch Mini accessories like a protector and case and so on, which they got taken down pretty quickly. But So that's another thing showing that it's probably coming. And something I thought about mentioning one of the last few weeks but didn't, is that I saw that NVIDIA was working on like a new Tegra chip for the NVIDIA Shield. And I heard some people speculate about, well, maybe they're going to stop manufacturing their original chip.
The X1.
The X1. And so Nintendo is kind of forced to do this sort of small update. That's why we're going to get more than just the Mini. We're also going to get a sort of revised Switch, but it's not like a big revision. It's just going to have a better chip. And
I dig that theory.
And
that
makes sense. Also fits with that Papagino's leak where the guy was like, there's 3 Switches being made. There's like a minor update, a Mini, and then they're working down the line like several years from now on a real big one. And I'm like, ooh, that makes sense. If NVIDIA's like, we're not going to keep making these chips for you. You got to start using these ones.
Mm-hmm. You have to imagine too that they're selling way more Switches than they are NVIDIA Shields.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
NVIDIA Shield's like 4 years old.
Yeah, it's been out for a while.
I guess they're coming out with one with a better chip.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, they're still making them. It's just like, yeah, I mean, them selling the stuff to Nintendo has probably done gangbusters for their business. Not that NVIDIA is probably hurting for money at this point.
Remember like the PS4 has had a few refreshes where they had model numbers that were like 0.01. And the only thing that those updates did was made the clock speed slightly different because it increased the cooling of the PS4.
Gotcha.
And so I remember going online where people on Reddit comments were like, make sure you check the model number on the box.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I guess if you're going to go out and buy one, you might as well. But that is funny.
Yeah.
Well, also, like, Nintendo has been, like, really fervent about fighting piracy this time around. And I think, like, any chance that they have to update the chipset to where all these, like, hacks and pirates won't be able to get in, I feel like that's something they would totally embrace. They've already, shown with anti-piracy measures that they're not over changing the hardware, So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a completely new model.
And I'm not a hardware guy. I don't know if any of y'all can speak to this, but I think that would just make the battery last longer, among other things. Or that would be one of the bigger benefits of the
like
more updated chip from
more
NVIDIA.
Efficient.
But I'm not really sure.
Yeah, battery life longer, shorter load times, as we've already seen. They've already done a little bit of overclocking with the current Switch model.
Because they wouldn't outdate the current Switch with
Right, it would just be a very...
Yeah.
Efficiency.
It wouldn't be like the new 3DS where there are some games that only run on that. You know what I mean? I think it would probably be one for one. It would just make little slight changes to the games that are already out.
If we get a very slight update like that, would you guys buy it?
Probably not.
I feel like I would. Ariel and I aren't having kids, and I'm like,
you got the money,
let's
baby.
go ahead. Like, I'll put 3 different size Switches on the bumper of my car, like instead of the family. Instead of the stick family on the back window, it's 3 different Switches, and they're all happy.
Well, what's funny is I want another dock, which is I don't need another dock, but I want one. And then one of my Joy-Cons has started to drift in the last week or two.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if they do this, then I could. I'm waiting for this announcement.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's exactly what I've been doing. No kidding. Left Joy-Con.
For me, it's like I want to get another model just so I can turn my current model into like an emulation machine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I'd love to hack my Switch, but I'm like deathly afraid of losing all my digital content because I'm all digital on my Switch. You know what I mean? So it's like, so I don't even really want to fuck with it right now just because I don't, want to get banned from the eShop.
Risk reward.
Yeah, exactly. Or like the online, which I've put a lot of, I've put in a lot of time and effort into. So it's like, so at this point, it's like, yeah, I'd love to get a new one and then just turn this one into something that runs all my N64 games and Super Nintendo games and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, in the Switch Heads group, I was sharing a bunch of Breath of the Wild mods where people like reskin Link to be like a Waluigi. And I would love to hack Breath of the Wild on my Switch. But
Can you do that? Can you install Breath of the Wild mods on hack Switches?
Nice.
See? Yeah, I got it. Okay, yeah, I'll buy one.
Yeah.
This is
I almost kind of want to get a
least.
mini. You know what I mean? Like I think a mini would be really nice if the screen is still pretty much the same size. Like, I don't see why not to get a mini at that point.
If you travel enough You can kind of rationalize it in some ways. I might be playing like Hulu and different things like in time off of my Switch, and so it would make sense to be like, oh, that one's for that room, and we stream the room like instead of a PS4 or something.
Well, or like you give Ariel one, and then you guys can just play Animal Crossing.
We'll
together.
just make them kiss. Yeah, we make the Wii's kiss.
Just turn them upside down, make them 69.
Yeah.
So, Retro Studios posted a job posting for art director for Metroid Prime 4, and I know that was getting passed around, which makes people think maybe they aren't as far along as we would like. Obviously, I don't think anybody thinks they're super far along, but maybe since they made a demo that they got shown to Nintendo, we were all hoping that was a sign that they're more far along.
Art director is a pretty fundamental role to have on a game. You know what I mean? If they're hiring for that, they probably aren't as far along as people were hoping.
But that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I think do it right?
Do you guys think that this is actually going to come out for the Switch? Or do you think it's going to be on whatever the next platform is?
Switch.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't think it's any less than 3 years away.
Yeah.
That
seems like 2022-ish. More or later.
Weird to hear.
I know, right?
But
because by that point we might have
the
purported
more advanced Switch.
Yeah,
it's alleged advanced Switch.
Yeah.
And speaking of Papagenos, who was the person we were just talking about, the more alleged advanced Switch, Tommy Green on our Facebook group shared this likely fake Smash DLC leak, which has originated from a Papagenos Discord server. There was a mod over there. I think his name was something like Paragon or something like that. And he predicted or had a legitimate leak or just guessed because everybody else was the Hero and Banjo-Kazooie, and said that the next two, and this was all before these announcements, were going to be an Undertale representative, and Waluigi was going to be the final DLC character. And so...
Yes, Waluigi. Yes, Cell.
Yeah.
So, probably not true, but in fact, if any of this interests you, go watch Papagenos just put out a new video sort of post E3 about all the state of all Smash DLC leaks and rumors and stuff. It's super long.
Yeah, it was like 45 minutes long,
but it's
right?
great.
I have not watched
but it's
it
great.
yet.
It's great. He breaks it all down and all like the likelihood and all that. And his sort of take on it, and it makes sense to me, is that all the remaining leaks that are still in play are probably not true. But it's just interesting.
That would be
to
so
follow.
weird if the main character from Undertale was in Smash.
Yeah, honestly, Waluigi is more believable to me than Undertale.
Because I saw it and it almost sounded a little bit realistic, and then I saw the Undertale rep and I was like, why'd they have to put that in there? I don't believe it.
You'd think, I mean, the fifth one could definitely be a big bang like that, right?
Yeah.
Something that people don't expect but really want.
I mean, Shovel Knight's in the game, so we can get some more indie representation.
The Mario Brothers Royale on the PC that we talked about last week was taken down / reskinned.
Completely unsurprisingly.
It's called DMCA Royale, is that right?
Yeah. It's not. It got DMCA'd, and now it's called DMCA Royale instead of Mario Royale.
And they reskinned it to look like
I mean, it's just like basically just there's like a little
sprites.
man, and then they changed all the graphics, so it's nothing is being taken from the NES game, but it's basically the same exact game. In fact, they've been updating it constantly before it got taken down and then after as well. So it's still up there. It's still fun. It just doesn't have a little Mario in it now. But all the levels are the same, and I think they've even been adding levels from like lost levels, and they've been adding more worlds from the original Mario as well, just completely reskinned.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
Reminded me of Super Meat Boy deaths a little
When you
bit.
watch the replays?
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's still very fun, and I think that Nintendo, hopefully, I mean, clearly they're aware of it now, so hopefully they're like, oh, this is actually really popular and fun. We should do something like that. I mean,
I played it a little bit. Did everybody else try it?
Yeah, I played it.
Yeah,
What'd
it
you
was
think?
fun.
It was fun. I never won.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
you can play super patient, but then you still, I don't know. At least I was like, I'm going to do this carefully and slowly. But there's like certain mechanics that I wasn't ready for. Like, in Mario, if you're at a certain position, the plants won't come up, but that doesn't matter in this game or whatever. Right. Like, so like I thought I'd be safe. You know what I mean? And then like a piranha plant would kill me. Like, what?
It's just fun to hit like a line of Mario's with a green shell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Last little bit of news here before we get into our topic. Risk of Rain 2 was rated for the Switch in Germany, and that leads us into our topic. Risk of Rain 2 is a roguelite game. We'll talk about that in a minute. Any of y'all excited about that or paying attention to that?
Yeah, I'm pumped. Risk of Rain was like a pretty fun like 2D roguelike whenever it came out. I didn't get too much into it, but the sequel, I know I have a friend who's been playing it a lot. And basically they just took the original game and put it into 3 dimensions. And now it's like a fully 3D roguelike that plays pretty much exactly like the original game. Looks really fun. Graphics aren't like super intense, so the Switch could totally handle it. And yeah, I'm excited to play it. And yeah, like you said, it fits right in with our topic for today. So that's why I wanted to put it on the episode.
Leads me into this. And this is going to be, I don't want this to be a lecture. Y'all interrupt me and correct me / interject. But I do want to talk about the terms because, and I have a lot of thoughts about this, or not a lot. But so we're going to talk about roguelikes or roguelites. And Rogue was a 1980 computer game. Sort of like an ASCII game back in the day as a dungeon crawler. So that's like the genre of game that it was. And it spawned this roguelike genre. And there are people who are really into roguelikes specifically, and they say that for a game to be a roguelike, it has to have certain things, certain elements to it, right? And in fact, in 2008, at one of their rogue-like conventions, they created a list of like 9 different things that a game to be technically called a roguelike has to have. And I'm going to run through these real quick. It's turn-based action, tile-based movement, randomly generated map, permadeath, one game mode, complexity, resource management, hack and slash, exploration and discovery. And in 2013,
that was a hell of a convention, by the way. I just want to say I got wild, and I did apologize for all my discretions. But
yeah, dude, you really took some Molly and ruined that whole convention.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? I tried to blow up a wall. It looked different than the rest of the walls.
So in 2013, a game came out called Rogue Legacy, and they coined the term roguelite, sort of trying to cater to people being like, we recognize this isn't a roguelike officially, but it's got some of these elements. And so
that was almost more like a Rogue Metroidvania light. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so these terms have kind of merged and in recent years, you know, this genre has become very popular. Spelunky being one of the games and some of the Binding of Isaac, and we'll talk about those more, but came into the more mainstream, and so people start banding around both of these terms without, you know, reverence for the people that think it's important. And language changes and evolves.
Yeah.
This game is from 1980. So these terms have kind of merged in popular discussions.
Literally no one knows what Rogue is. Like, seriously, I've talked to a bunch of people, and I only know what Rogue is because I've played Binding of Isaac and
all this up,
and Spelunky and stuff. And so it's like, but whenever I talk about Rogue to anybody, they have no idea what it means, but everyone knows what roguelike means.
Right.
Well, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people
increasingly
do.
so.
It's become a genre at this point. You know,
and so I'm a big I'm into linguistics, and I'm into the idea of, descriptivism versus prescriptive. Like, I'm a descriptivist. And that means that the way people talk is more important than the rules about how people talk, in my opinion. There are people who are prescriptivists, and they're the people that are like, oh, you only say whom if it's this or that, or you can't say a double negative.
Grammar Nazis, basically.
Right. Yeah. But the point is, if you can understand it, then that's all that matters. And we can describe language as it's used. And now those terms are merged. Sorry to you purists. It's kind of like the term hacker. A lot of people that are super into computers get upset when, like, hackers aren't necessarily bad or good. They're just, that means you know, somebody who hacks into a system. Like, they know it's like, no, sorry, now hacker means, you know, somebody who's doing malicious things on a computer. Unfortunately, that's the term has been globally popularized that
but
way.
Hacker can only be using a Unix-based system.
The movie made too much money.
Exactly.
This is what this is now.
And they skateboard under big trucks.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, speaking of skateboarding, but I love skateboarding.
I'm very curious as to where this segment is going to go.
Oh, this is a bad one. Up the inverted ramp and off to a 180 to a Christ air. I was not familiar with roguelite or roguelike to the term or the genre. I was familiar with the games, but I was not familiar with the genre until like a couple years ago when my coworker Brooks told me what it means, because he would keep on saying roguelike, and I'd be like, I have no idea.
Right.
Yeah, you just nod along.
Yeah, I was just not along until I asked him what it means, and it was a very specific type of game. So if you're listening out there and you're like, I don't know what these games are, or I'm not unfamiliar with this type of genre, I'll offer that perspective.
Sure.
Because these are the games that I haven't played a lot. I haven't played a lot of Binding of Isaac.
Right.
But I have appreciation for what Binding of Isaac brings to an experience being unique to each player.
So Rob and I probably have like a cumulative like 3,500 hours in Binding of Isaac. I imagine it's got to be something like that.
I had it on PS4 and I played it forever, and then I was like, oh, I got to get this on Switch, or I'm worth nothing to myself. And so I checked today, and it's in the thousands.
Wow.
And I was like, oh,
yeah, same.
No. I really thought about my life for a second, and I was like, I love it. It's a great game.
I've done like PC, Vita, Switch, and then also PS4 as well. So it's like, it's definitely a game. Like, I think just to kind of clarify,
I
like
think we
what
should.
now I think colloquially
what does this
roguelike
mean?
means. I think it's any game that every time you play it, it's different.
Yeah, let's do our own Berlin.
Yeah,
as a modern definition.
I've got my
I would
thoughts
say
on this
I would
too.
say basically what it needs to be a roguelike is procedurally generated levels.
Right.
So every time you play, it's different, right?
Definitely.
I think that it needs to have permadeath still.
Of some
nature.
with some wiggle room there, right?
Right. And if you don't know what permadeath means, it's
it
basically
means you die and you start over.
Yeah. If you die, you don't get to like use another life and blah blah blah, unless you picked up an item that gives you an extra life.
There's no continues. There's no save points.
Right.
Your quarters
start
can't
back.
help you here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a game where it's like you like either you get all the way to the end or you get as far as you get and the game is over. You know.
Now there might be some level of some kind of progression saved, and that's what's different than purists
Right.
are saying. But I think that is now okay, right? That doesn't disqualify you from
Yeah,
this
yeah. And
genre.
I would say that pretty much all roguelikes now have some form of progression.
Right.
And it makes it more addictive, honestly, to know that, like, okay, I might not beat this whole thing, but I could unlock this or get this achievement or something. Like, there always seems to be something to play for, even if it's like, oh, I didn't achieve, I did a run, my goal was to do such and such a thing. I didn't get to it, but I think now that I look at it, I can unlock this other thing. Just
Right.
I'm happy to be this close. Like, that's what makes me keep playing it or not get so discouraged. And,
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like the last thing that a roguelike needs is like that it puts more emphasis on learning the game's systems rather than learning the game's levels, right? It's like it's a thing where it's like you get better at the game not because of the repetition of playing like certain levels and memorizing certain things, but rather that you learn how the game works and you become better as a player, right? I think that's what's kind of required for a roguelike at this point. You know?
Yeah, you have to almost be able to take it apart and put it back together again to know which parts to exploit to kind of break the game. It was actually when I would watch Isaac videos on YouTube was the first time that I started to realize the idea of like, oh, it's a game breaking combination, or the idea of like breaking the game, just making it so easy that you dominate it. And yeah, it's something that I can't always do, but boy, that feeling of when you find a game breaking combination, it's just,
you just become God, basically.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
That's another thing that I don't think is necessarily required for a game to be a roguelike, but something that is in a lot of them is like the different items that you'd be picking up on a certain run or whatever that you're doing, would be, you have like synergies between them, right? It's like, that's a lot of the fun of a game like Isaac or say, Dead Cells or something like that is like, oh, I have this item and then, this item stacks really well with this other item I have. You know what I mean?
So often you'll be like, oh, I'm not a big fan of the ice, path. Like ice weapons, not really my thing. And then like later on you'll be like, what a fool I was a month ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Ice weapons are my only thing.
Yeah.
Now.
You learn what works over time, and it's all about this like self-discovery.
Yes, it's beautiful. There's a life lesson in there somewhere if you could stop playing long enough to live your life.
Exactly.
And if I'm on the outside looking in, I'm saying like, why are we talking about roguelikes on a Nintendo podcast? And it feels like because there's a lot of these type of games on this system.
Yeah.
And thanks to the OS, you can like quickly pause it or quickly turn it off and jump back in it like in a moment's notice in a couple of seconds. You don't have to boot up your
the Switch,
PC.
The Switch does have a ton, and this is not an exclusive list, but I compiled some of the more popular ones that are on the Switch, and there's obviously tons more roguelikes that aren't on the Switch, but there's a lot on the Switch. There's Enter the Gungeon, Darkest Dungeon, Binding of Isaac, Cave Blazers, Crypt of the Necrodancer, Dead Cells, Wizard of Legend, Into the Breach, Slay the Spire. That one is not on there. I don't know why that got...
What, Rogue Legacy?
Yeah, or that is on there too.
It's on the Switch.
Oh, Rogue Legacy is on there too. I didn't put that on there. So
yeah, they added it.
Well, at any rate, so there's like 10 right there that are very popular. And there's probably more that I don't have listed there. And so, yeah, I think that's why we're talking about it in part. It's so ubiquitous now.
Right. I think there's a couple reasons we see a bunch on the Switch. A, because like what you said, it's a great like little pick up and play for a short amount of time, which is what the Switch is perfect for in the first place, right? So it's like, oh, you're like, hey, I can sit down on the toilet and do like a 20-minute run or something like that, right? So A, there's that. And then B, I think that just pretty much all of these games are indie games. You know what I mean? Like there aren't a ton of AAA roguelikes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like the Switch has proved itself to be this enormous indie machine, you know? So it's like, of course we're going to be seeing a lot of roguelikes because it's like a very popular genre right now. You know, and there was a little bit where roguelikes were kind of dying down in the indie sphere, but then they just like came back again. I think it's like a virus.
You can almost like see what's working on PC and stuff or whatever, and then be like, okay, let's take the cream that is ribbon to the top here and port those over and make those that are already successful and tried and true.
Publishers might be doing that. That's a good call.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to me that they are so popular, but there aren't AAA studios making them. You know, that there's this glut of them, but they're all from indie developers. It's
I think we're going
to
start to see more of it. I know like Double Fine. Well, Double Fine isn't really a AAA studio, but Double Fine is working on
by Microsoft
that game Rad that was shown off for the Switch. Like that'll be coming. That's a roguelike. I think at the Bethesda, conference, there was a game called Deathloop that they showed,
that's right.
which I don't know that it's a roguelike, but it definitely sounds like one. It's called Deathloop. You know what I mean? So I think that some of AAAs are starting to get more into it.
And some of those elements of permadeath and random generation might creep into bigger games like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's an argument to be said about like battle royale games kind of being like multiplayer roguelikes in a way, you know what I mean? Where it's like round based. You
start over,
You know what I mean? And so it's
you find loot. I mean, that's a good call because like, I mean, they're based, they're dungeon crawlers, which is, exploring, finding loot, getting stronger. And that's what you do in Fortnite or Apex Legends, right? You start over, you get in there, you find the loot. And you try to win.
I think the difference there is that the map isn't procedurally generated. That's true. Right. That's kind of like the main difference.
You're not going against an AI a lot of the time.
Right. Yeah. They're like most. It's obviously not 1-to-1.
Right.
But
there's a Venn diagram there. That's very
for sure.
Didn't think of that.
I think there's also a Venn diagram for roguelikes and arcade games as well. Like I really am reminded of like the arcade experience of just getting as far as you can get with
or
as
the
much
old
quarters
NES
as you have.
games, right? I think about that's where it's familiar to me is like playing old games like I talked about on the podcast before, like Battletoads. That game was incredibly hard, and you had to restart it every time, and you were lucky to get past the scooter things,
the scooter level,
you know what I mean? But I kept doing it, you know?
I wonder if it's like for people that grew up playing games like that on the NES originally, maybe that's triggering some kind of scratching some similar brain itch that you might not get from playing other games. That repetition, just another try, one more try before dinner, Mom.
Right,
that kind of thing.
Well, it harkens back to the era of like, you know, back in the NES era. It's like the games were fucking hard because you would spend, you know, $50-$60 on a single game, and then that would just be the game you had, right? And you couldn't have like big, massive 32 gigabyte cartridges back then. You had very limited amounts of what you could do. So in order to like make the replayability as best as you could and to make the game as, you know, you play it for as long as you can, they just made them really, really, really hard. So you had to just get really good at it and play it for a very long time. And I think, you know, a lot of these indie games that we're seeing are done in a, you know, pixelated 8-bit style or whatever in these old ways. And so I think that just difficulty is something that you see a lot in this genre of games.
It's another instance of an artist being put in a box and creating something greater because of it in a wonderful way.
I agree.
So we talked about some of these games, but especially because I'm kind of like Matt, I don't play a lot of these, but David and Rob, what is Binding of Isaac? Like, or, you know, I mean, we've talked about what makes some of these games roguelikes, but what are the specific, you know, art or mechanics or what have you for some of the ones you really like, in particular Binding of Isaac or Dead Cells?
Yeah, maybe just like a little history of the game. Like,
yeah.
Like, but maybe before we get into that, even we should probably talk about Spelunky, right? Because I think like Spelunky is like the game that popularized the genre, right? And pretty much every developer who makes a roguelike game will cite Spelunky as the reason that they made the game, right? Like even Edmund McMillan, the guy who basically designed all the Binding of Isaac and really popularized it, like he was like, I basically wanted to make Zelda mixed with Spelunky, right? Okay. And Spelunky is a game where you're like, you know, you're going down a, you know, kind of a dungeon. They're like caves and you're getting down to the bottom and you're just trying to get as far as you possibly can get, right? And, you know, that started as kind of this just PC only, you know, I think it was a Game Maker game, and then eventually came out with like a revamp of it. Binding of Isaac happened in a very similar way as well. Like Binding of Isaac was originally a Flash game, and it was, started on Newgrounds actually, and it was played in browser, right? And eventually he did a Steam release that was still built in Flash, and I think that game was originally sold on Steam for $5. Something like that.
A different soundtrack too.
Totally different composer who Edmund has since had a falling out with. Unfortunately, Danny Baranowski was the guy's name. But yeah, so Binding of Isaac was released as this Flash game originally for $5, and then there was like a $5 or $10 expansion that was released that added a ton to it called Wrath of the Lamb. And then eventually Binding of Isaac Rebirth was released, which was like a total rebuild of the game, not in Flash, so it ran a lot better.
And is that the one that's on Switch? Or
not quite. So
Afterbirth.
Yeah.
Right?
So, well, there was Rebirth and then Afterbirth, which was an expansion for Rebirth.
Yeah.
And then there was Afterbirth Plus, which was an expansion for Afterbirth. And then Afterbirth Plus is what was ported to the Switch.
Okay.
Right? And then since then, there have been expansions even added.
Been the update. And then there's another one that's updating only to Steam, but
it'll probably
eventually
come to
will come to console. Of course.
Yeah. What are they calling that one?
Blood Baby. I don't know. Something like
Binding of Isaac Blood Baby.
Yeah, it's something.
Anyway, but, like describing the game, like do you want to kind of break down what the game is like?
I can tell you, for me, when I first started playing it, I was like, okay, I heard this game's really good. I didn't really even understand the concepts of roguelikes or roguelites, or I didn't even know there was something to have a difference between the two of them. And I remember the first time I beat it, took me a while because it was kind of tough because you don't have a bunch of stuff unlocked, but I beat it. I kind of went like, oh, that was kind of weird. And then a bunch of stuff unlocked. I was like, oh, I better do another run. And it just and if you can get past that point, then it just becomes this addictive thing of like, not only am I playing a second time because I want to see what it's like when I have this item with that item with that item, because it was really cool, even though the next time you play, you're not going to get anything even close to that. So I want to play a second round because I'm curious about what would happen. But then I also just want to play again because the end of the game kind of gets they move the goalpost back a little bit each time. And
there's like one boss,
really
and then there's like a boss 2 floors later, and then a new boss 2 floors after that. And then,
And then like the game will end, but it's like, okay, it actually just expanded. Now there's like eight floors instead of 6 because you've made that initial push, which at first feels like, oh, this is kind of cheap, or like this is like, what am I even doing here? And then after a while, it's just like, no, you will never be this game, and that's beautiful. Like I also think a crazy thing about this game is, and a lot of games, is that I've got a little app on my phone that I can go through and be like, this is what I have, what I don't have. This is how I get this thing if I don't know it. Like just like kind of a pocket wiki.
Oh, okay.
Kind of, yeah. It's like a little
not
pocket
like cheating,
wiki,
but
really.
like it gives you all the like
gives you the info. So like if I'm trying to decide between a weapon or two, or I'm looking at synergies, I can kind of look on that app. Whereas, man, if you were playing something like this in the 80s, you would have to know a dude or a gal,
or call the Nintendo hotline, or something.
or just write a bunch of stuff down. Like, and so it's incredible. Since that, I think because developers know that people can have a new level of organization with their fandom about this stuff that they can just get absolutely wild with how many aspects of
that was
the
like a
games
design
there are.
choice by Edmund as well for the game, was like that, to be purposefully vague about how a lot of the items work together so that you discover how these items synergize through repetition and through like experimentation, right? Like we were talking about, one of the hallmarks of a roguelike game is like discovery and stuff like that. That's kind of how it manifests in this game. And even just past that, like past the systems of the game, it's like, you know, it's like a top-down Zelda, like, you know, it's like NES Zelda dungeons, but they're randomized, right?
Okay,
And then
I
it's
was gonna
also
say Zelda means a lot of things. What Zelda is it most?
it's most like NES Zelda,
The original,
yeah, like the first one. And so it's like, it basically is what he wanted to mix Spelunky with the original Legend of Zelda, right? And so it's just like doing a dungeon in that game, but every time you play the dungeon is different. And it's also got this just bizarre tone to it. Like the main enemy in this game is your mom. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to kill your mom. It's basically
really?
like, yeah. So
That's the story, I
well,
guess?
like the game is kind of autobiographical, and there's actually a few like interviews with Edmund McMillan, which I really suggest you watch online, just because he's a fascinating guy in general. This is the same guy who developed Super Meat Boy, and
okay.
and
I
a
didn't
lot of
realize
other
it was
games like
that. That was the same guy.
The End is Nigh.
The End is
Super
Nigh,
Meat
Snow
Boy.
Switch game. Basically, it's kind of autobiographical. He was raised in a Catholic household, and his mother, you know, and he was like always drawing really like fucked up, gory, like comics and images and stuff, and his mom was really against him doing this creative stuff, you know?
And she kind of leaned into it harder, and that just made him lean into it even harder.
Yeah, exactly. And so in the game, your mom gets a voice from God saying that your son has been corrupted by sin and he must be, you know, you must destroy him, just like the biblical story of the binding of Isaac, you know, where Abraham had to sacrifice Isaac to God,
Okay.
right? And so basically that's what it's also kind of based on, right?
And so there's moments where you're fighting in a toy chest, fighting in a womb, fighting in all kinds of like a basement, fighting in all different scenarios.
There's tons of like Catholic iconography. Like he involves like tarot and the zodiac and all this kind of mysticism and stuff like that. So it's a great like conduit for all this interesting stuff. Like I've gotten into tarot because of Binding of Isaac. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't tell Ariel I don't want in the house because I'm afraid of ghosts. If it was a Binding of Isaac tarot.
Yeah. But then it's also really inspired by a lot of like memes. There's tons of like memes in the game, and like
There's
and
a lot
internet
of
culture, video game
culture.
references. Yeah. So it's like, it's kind of this catch-all of his childhood and all the stuff that has influenced him throughout time. You know, and there's tons of like piss and shit and vomit and blood and all this kind of gross stuff. Yeah. Anyway.
Hey, why didn't we
all
start off with
cartoonish.
that?
yeah. I guess I didn't want to put it in that light, but yeah, it's got to be part of why I
It's
enjoy
really
it.
gross.
Yeah, it's a very gross game if you think about it.
It's also fun to like listen to people talking about the game out of context, because they're like, oh, hey, I missed my deal with the devil, and so you know, I had to take number 2 so that I could, you know, fucking get the sepulcher.
I got a dead cat.
I've got a dead cat I have to take care of.
yeah, it's a tough
But
choice.
anyway, I mean, you know, we've talked a lot about Binding of Isaac, but like that's only really one of the many roguelikes that are out there.
What are some of y'all, as the two enthusiasts, what are some of the other ones you particularly
I
like?
liked Enter the Gungeon, Dead Cells quite a bit. There was a time where I thought Dead Cells might replace Isaac for me, and I was like, oh, how could you?
That's
But-
what happens with every roguelike. I
Yeah.
get into it and I'm like, this will be the Isaac killer, and then I always just go back to Isaac.
Maybe Slay the Spire?
Yeah, Slay the Spire is one that I've been getting into a lot more recently. It's like a card-based roguelike. And I'm really enjoying that one. It doesn't do the thing, like in that game, it's like every single thing is explained to you as you're going,
okay.
you know, so it's like a lot easier to track what you're doing. But yeah, Dead Cells is incredible. Like Dead Cells is a great game where it's like, it's a Metroidvania, very much like Castlevania or Metroid. And, but you know, it's like exploration based and you're figuring stuff out, but it is also procedurally generated, right? And it has these synergies and kind of this systems based method
is
to gameplay.
Another genre that that when we were talking about this episode, I was kind of thinking we might lump in, but then I realized there's enough just in roguelikes.
Yeah, we should do a whole Metroidvania
That's
episode.
another genre that is popular among indie developers and is like sort of throwbacky too. But I'm sorry, that's
but
just
they're
a total
very
aside.
different genres,
Oh yeah,
right?
very- I like
by nature.
Metroidvanias. I don't know that I like roguelikes. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it's easy. It's kind of. And I hesitate to
haven't
say this
played
'cause
much.
it's not easy to make a roguelike, and I don't want to say that it's easy to make a roguelike, but in a way, you almost have more there's less risk, I think, in making a roguelike, because what you're doing is you're doubling down on like the systems of the game, right? You're like, okay, I'm going to make it to where when you move this much, you do that much damage, blah, 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 blah. And then you just set up systems for these procedural levels to come into play, right? There's less level design that you have to do. Like, I feel like if you're not a good level designer, a roguelike is the kind of game you should make.
Though
you know what I mean?
I don't know how it works, but I might feel, though, don't you think they have to, in their random generation, have some parameters for it to be good still?
No,
though,
of course, but it's not something that you have to like plan out as much. It's more something that you discover through testing, right? It's like just you're playing the game over and over and over again.
You don't have to be as clever to think this item should be here, so that when you find it, you can go back.
Yeah,
this
and I'm sure game designer friends that I have who listen to this podcast are screaming at me right now. Yeah, but that's how I have always assumed it to be. You know what I mean? Is that it's a game that you kind of you get it right through testing, which makes sense because you're making a game that you're hoping to have people play over and over and over again anyway.
Yeah, and I think the important mechanic of that is the gameplay loop. Like if we're going back to talk about the Venn diagram between roguelikes and battle royale games, there's a specific loop that you will always play in order to like try to be better at something specific. Mm-hmm. If it's a battle royale game, you're trying to figure out how to hide quicker or how to shoot better. But I'm sure with roguelikes, you're trying to figure out what's the best, Rob, you were saying, the best combination of items in order to be to min-max.
Right. Or like rather than like memorizing level design or like how a level is laid out, you're memorizing like the movement of your enemies that you're fighting and like the tells that they give before they attack or something like that, which is also something that kind of falls into battle royale in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Dead Cells is probably one of the best on there right now.
I just also love how the communities online have helped so much with the updates on these games. I know that's not exclusive to roguelikes or anything, but it's certainly very true in Isaac that these are just Steam mods that they're, all getting along with and choosing and saying this is the best one and picking them out and stuff. And so I kind of like knowing that while I'm playing it, that a lot of these updated modifications and these new rollouts, like I don't know, what is that next one called? Whatever it is, it's got like more Isaac than
I know they're bringing it. There was a mod for Afterbirth, or there was a mod for Rebirth called Antibirth, and they're taking the mod team from Antibirth and they're bringing all of Antibirth into Afterbirth. So it's like going to be this huge fusing of these two completely separate games. So it's insane. It's going to be crazy. Yeah,
I just love it. Yeah, but I love that it's all like almost been trial and error, just through the community already.
And a great thing about Binding of Isaac 2, before we just move on, is like you and I have played Binding of Isaac separately for years at this point, right? And I think we've only ever played co-op like once or twice.
Yeah.
But then whenever we have, it's so fun because it's like we've never played together, but we both know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like we're always on the same page.
And we'll play, I think we played for like 20 minutes, and there was like one time where you pointed something out to me that I was like, oh, I was going to miss that. And then there was one time where I pointed something out to you, and it was like, ooh, I see this guy over here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like usually like we're on top of everything.
Why don't we play this game together way more often?
God, especially now that you can't get away from me. David's making a move for it.
I was over here Googling, is it Repentance? Does that sound right?
That is it. Yeah, Binding of Isaac Repentance. Thank you for doing a modicum of research. Thank you.
Good job.
This thing I love.
Yeah. But other than that, we should probably move on. Are there any roguelikes that aren't on the Switch that you guys want to see come to it, or is that just me who has one?
No, tell us. I mean,
it's high time for fucking Spelunky to come to the Switch. Like, it's unbelievable that Spelunky is not on the Switch right now. Like, Spelunky is the only game that I would say, like, is a roguelike that might be better than Binding of Isaac for me. I can go back to that game over and over and over again. And I have it on my PS4 and that's fine, but I want it on my goddamn Switch. You know what I mean? I want to play it on the go.
Just I dipped a toe into it on my PS4. I didn't let myself get hooked, but if it comes out on the Switch, I'm getting it day one.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's been rumblings about the sequel, Spelunky 2, coming to Switch. I really hope that is true because it's like we've got all these roguelikes on here, but then the kind of granddaddy of them all, Spelunky, is not on it. And it's just been like so frustrating for me because I had it on my Vita, but I'm not going to lug around my Vita and my Switch everywhere. You know what I mean? It's like I haven't turned on my Vita in a while. So it's like, it needs to come.
Let it rest.
And
Let it rest.
I'm really waiting for it. But hopefully you guys check out some of these games if you haven't like been playing them, because there is clearly.
Let me ask one more
passionate
question.
about
As
it.
somebody who hasn't played a lot of these, what would you say should be the one that I would try, or me and or anybody listening, if they're like, I've never really played much roguelikes, what should I try?
Honestly, I know we had mentioned Dead Cells and Isaac, and so those are the two that are the tip of my tongue right now. But I do think you should not underestimate the vulgarity and the grossness of Isaac. It does not bother me.
Right, that doesn't appeal to me.
It does. I would say you're not out of line. It's not like, oh, Patrick's being ridiculous. Like, it's gross.
I might
It's
not
gross.
mind it if I got into it, but at least from just hearing
It'd
it's
be
like
a
that doesn't
barrier.
make me excited.
I would say that that's an easy way to go. Like, okay, I'll start with Dead Cells. Enter the Gungeon is very.
I would say Enter the
good
Gungeon,
mechanics,
honestly.
dodge roll mechanics, and that's their developer. I think.
Yeah, dodge roll games. Yeah.
But what you're also saying is, if I am into pee and poo poo,
Yes.
If you're into PP and poo poo, you can't go wrong with finding Isaac.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
but,
dark.
Honestly, like if you're trying to get into it, I would say go Enter the Gungeon, because Enter the Gungeon is a very similar game to Isaac. It's just got more like pronounced gunplay, right? And it's more like straight up twin stick shooter. You know what I mean? And then like you said, it's got that dodge roll, like
That
almost
added
like Dark Souls kind of dodge roll mechanic, you know what I mean? So it brings some of that into it and it simplifies it, but it's still fucking hard, you know what I mean? But it's like, it holds your hand a little bit more at the beginning, you know, because Isaac, I've talked to a bunch of people that play Isaac for like, you know, they'll even play it for like 15, 20 hours and they're like, I'm just not getting this. And it's like, you really have to beat it before you realize how good it is.
And as
you know
somebody that's totally hooked, it's our friend Aaron.
Yeah.
Shout out to Aaron. He was like playing and he's like, I just don't get it. And then he watched us play it for a minute and he's like, oh wow. And then he was just like,
And then
he's
he's
totally
hooked.
into it.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
hooked.
yeah.
So it's nice. It's a nice thing to pass along, but there is a definite barrier on Isaac. And I think Dead Cells for that matter. So I would say
Dead
Dead
Cells is
or
hard too,
Gungeon.
man.
Yeah, but
it's a little more accessible though.
It's
for
really
sure.
fun once you get it. So I guess Enter the Gungeon is what we land on.
I think so. I think Enter the Gungeon, it's still top down like Isaac, but it's like it holds your hand a little bit more. But then if you want a challenge, like it's endless. You know,
And
like I know a guy who's put just as much into that game as I have into Isaac.
A little character selection there too, which is nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
That's one hell of a thing we just did. Yeah. Just gushed on pretty much one game for like 30 minutes.
I love you.
Well, let's talk about what other games we've been playing, unless that's what y'all have been playing.
Well, it's a lot of what I've been playing.
A fair amount of it, yeah.
Rob, what have you been playing? Mostly Binding of Isaac recently?
I've been playing a lot of Binding of Isaac. I just got one strike for 50 cents. I think I posted on the group, which I played for at least 50 cents worth already. So I'm very happy with it. I even picked it back up and played it today, so that was nice. But I'm playing, watching my wife, Ariel Greenspoon, play a lot of South Park Stick of Truth. And I even told her they didn't bring the second game to the Switch, even though they did. And I've already bought it. So, cause like when we'll like finish The Sopranos, she'll be like, oh, she'll like miss the show. And so when we finish the Stick of Truth, I'll be like, oh, maybe one day they'll bring it and then I'll surprise her.
Just slam it on the table.
Oh, I hope she doesn't listen to this. Oh, I did bad. Don't listen to this.
Yeah. Well, whatever. You
so
can
yeah,
surprise her with something else.
That's been really fun.
Surprise her with the Sopranos prequel series that's coming out.
Yeah,
as well.
Son's
I
in
just
there.
put it out of the bag.
Surprise! Wait, okay, we can't talk about it now.
Oh, and the last one is I think it's called, I don't know, I'm not pronouncing it right, but Verlet Swing or Verlet Swing.
Yeah, Verlet Swing or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's trippy. The mechanics are a little tough, but it's just kind of a nice game if you're 420 friendly, I would say, just because it's got some crazy graphics. And
That looks like a very hip game.
Swinging through the air. Oh yeah, my politics have completely changed since I started playing it.
Yeah, but it's got like weird like Easter Island heads,
Yes,
and it's
and
all got this weird
pizza.
VHS aesthetic and everything.
It's
like,
bizarre. It's even different than I thought it was going to be, but I'm into it. I don't know if it'd be worth money for everybody, but check it out on YouTube at first, at least.
yeah, I'll probably pick that up on a sale. It looks
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah. Me, I've been mostly playing. I have been playing some Isaac. Basically, it's like when I'm watching Games Done Quick when it's on. Oftentimes, it's like I can lose interest a little bit, so I'll just want something to do with my hands. So like I'll put on some Binding of Isaac like while I'm watching something else. So that's something I've been doing recently. And then other than that, I've downloaded some new games that I haven't really played too much yet. I did download One Strike with that sale by the same developers as Astro Bears as well. Really good, or the same publisher anyway. And then other than that, I've been playing more Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, and I've been really enjoying that quite a bit. Yeah, It's like I'm not one really for the visual novel style game. It kind of loses my interest pretty quickly. I've also been like just doing a ton of other things. I'm like reading this like 900 page book right now, so I've been doing a lot of reading. But like, but if you like reading, Ace Attorney is great. Yeah, it's like it's basically reading a book with slight anime characters
and picking
in it.
a response or whatever.
Yeah. But it's really fun, and it's fun to play with other people watching because you can kind of like get their input on what decisions you should make. And it's like, and sometimes I miss things and I'm like looking for evidence or whatever. And so it's a really fun game to play kind of with others. And the story is just great. Like, yeah, you're this lawyer, but also there's, psychics in it, and there's a lot of like weird Japanese mysticism and then all this kind of cool stuff. So it's a fun game, and I'm really enjoying it so far.
Nice.
I've been playing Vacation Simulator on VR.
Oh, I saw that.
Have you guys ever played any like a job simulator?
I played Job Simulator
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that, but you're on vacation.
Very cool.
That's less stressful than a job.
It's so chill. Some of the missions are make a hamburger for someone.
Nice.
That's it. It's like the chillest game. I mean, it's like super easy to pick up and play for a little while. It's like super colorful, very funny. I also did an escape room this past weekend.
That's kind of a game.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if you guys love escape rooms, but I love escape rooms.
I've never done one. I'm curious about it.
I did one kind of recently. Well, I say that it was like over a year ago, but what it really reminded me of was like Myst.
It's totally
Myst.
Myst.
It's just like it's like real life Myst.
Weird puzzles.
Yeah. I was a big Myst guy, so I loved it.
Yeah, there are some mechanisms that once you play enough escape games, that they have the same mechanics that you can kind of see between the lines. But still, some of it are very satisfying. Like one of the puzzles was there was like a golf ball, and you use that golf ball. You get it very early on in the game, and then later a little wall opens up, and there's like a little putting course. And it's like in the corner that opens up, but in order to see the course, you have to lift up a knob that opens up the screen. And so one person has to look down at the course while the other person puts the ball. And so you have to like communicate, and it's incredible. And
it's like Exhibit, man. It's like we put a game in your games. You
yes,
can play while you
exactly.
play.
Exhibit was there.
That's true.
I would love to do an escape room with Exhibit.
Oh my god! Could you?
He kept
imagine?
trying to remodel the escape room. Exhibit.
There were so many LCDs. Patrick, what have you been playing?
I beat Wolfenstein 2 to free up the space on my Switch for the
hell
upcoming
yeah.
games. And then for Father's Day, my wife and kid, though he's 4, so he didn't pick anything out, got me the Labo vehicle kit to play with my kids. So
I saw you've been playing that.
We broke that out this past weekend, and my kid's really into it. And he's still a little too young, or he's too young to really help me build it. But this time he was very excited, and I was trying to get it done. He's jumping on me, and I'm trying to fold this cardboard. It's a little stressful.
Yeah.
Unlike the previous ones I've made where he's been asleep, and I can kind of do it in a more chill way.
Which one's the vehicle?
So it's got a pedal, like a foot pedal for like driving.
Oh, it's got like a
and then
tension
it has
wire or something?
Yeah.
It's got a like a steering wheel.
You're doing the steering wheel.
I know. I'm like, how do you say steering wheel?
A turning mechanism.
I'm a father.
A flight stick and I haven't built, the only part I haven't built is the submarine, something that lets you control a submarine. And so
like a periscope or something.
I built the flight stick first because my son was most excited about the airplane, and you have to have the pedal. So I built the pedal, built the flight stick, and I started playing it with him. And then we ran out of fuel, and you have to have the car to refuel.
Oh,
so
damn.
I was like, fuck. That was the one I was putting off because it's the biggest one.
Right.
And so then I furiously built that yesterday while he was climbing all over me.
Yeah.
And like, what are you doing? How can I help? I'm like, you're 4. You can't really help, you know? Like, you're going to bend the cardboard.
You're terrible with cardboard. Have you seen the cereal boxes in the set?
But anyway, we were playing it today for the first time with the car so I could actually refuel the thing. And it's pretty fun, actually.
So this one, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost more of like an open world thing,
It is.
right? It's like you can go anywhere with these vehicles.
I think there are 10 little sub-worlds. They're not very big, but they're all connected, and you can drive or fly or whatever around them. And they have about, it looks like they have 8 missions each. And it's a lot of the same stuff, like take somebody back to a different place or shoot the balloons when you're in the plane, which has so far been my favorite part.
Right.
And then I think once you do all the 80 missions, you don't have to refuel. So I'm kind of like, we need to do these missions so they don't have to drive over to this thing and refuel. It's kind of a dumb mechanic.
Have you tried the steering wheel and the pedal with Mario Kart?
No,
yet?
but I just started playing with this today,
Right.
and I'm like, I actually think this might be fun in Mario Kart.
Yeah, I agree.
My son's not very good at the steering wheel. I mean, it unlike what is it, pin steering or whatever it's called, where your steering wheel kind of goes back. So if you turn, a steering wheel will kind of come back to straighten you out. You have to do the straightening out yourself. And so he just starts driving in circles, and I'm like, minor adjustments, straighten yourself out. You know what I mean? It's trying to teach a 4-year-old to drive.
Yeah. You don't let him drive your car from time to time?
He has one of those power motor things, like he's got a tractor that he can drive, and he's surprisingly good at it, but I think it must
have tension
that comes back, because when he plays with this, he's just driving in circles.
Well, hey, I mean, it's modular. Just throw a rubber band in there, man. You can throw some tension into that thing. You made it yourself.
It's really building those things and watching how they come together is amazing,
Yeah.
even if the games are a little bit short.
It definitely sounds like the gamiest out of all of them. And it's like, but for me, it's like the fun of Labo is making it.
Right. I'm a big Lego enthusiast too, so it's a lot of fun to build them when I'm not hurried and being jumped on. So
can I throw in one more thing? One more
please
game?
do.
So a game that, just on the off chance that somebody plays this and they weren't going to, because it could change their lives. Seriously, it's this game. It's this game called Everything. It's not spelled that way. But I was playing it. It was another game I was playing with my wife, and it was really fun and stuff. And then like partway through, like these Alan Watts quotes start getting involved. And if you're like hippy dippy at all, or maybe you're thinking about your soul these days, go check out that game, Everything. It's a lot of fun. It's some fun, but it's like just very intriguing and super thought provoking. So check that out. And give it a shot and open your mind.
We had the sound designer for Everything on this podcast.
I might have listened to that and then not even known that, because I think, was that the only sound designer we've ever had on?
Yeah.
I might have heard that one and not listened to that part. That's weird.
He talks a lot about like editing those Alan Watts clips, and he said it also
I definitely
changed his
didn't
life.
hear it then.
Yeah,
okay, beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh God, I gotta listen to that one.
That's episode 15 if you want to listen to Eduardo.
Yeah.
Talk about everything. And
oh my God.
Yeah, it's a fun, you're right. It is kind of life changing. And it's like, if you haven't been exposed to Alan Watts before this, it's a great introduction to his kind of philosophies.
Yo, I had that same reaction when I played that game, because I didn't know what it was. I just saw the weird animation, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going in between things, and then I'm playing with headphones, and then Alan Watts quotes come on. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You were saying Christina Parrish was way into Alan Watts.
She turned me onto it when she was talking about filming Call Me Brother. She was like, I'm done filming. I'm just going to go listen to some Alan Watts and take a nap. And so after that, I started looking into Alan Watts on YouTube, and I don't know, dude, I'm moving to Fort Collins, Colorado. So like, I'm pretty happy, dude. Moving to Fort Collins. Play's good.
Well, very good. I think that was one hell of an episode. You guys feel good about that episode?
Yes.
Honored.
I think that went pretty well, right?
Very happy.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming. You've been an excellent guest today.
Thank you so much. I will continue to listen. This is not like I've scratched my itch and I'm done with that. And I
Cross that one off the list.
I gotta check out that Eduardo episode.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Thanks to Corduroy for the music. Thanks to you, listener, for listening to the podcast. And give us some feedback. If you want to hear us talk about a topic, send us an email, Facebook message, whatever, Twitter, tweet thing you want to do. We'll take it under advisement.
I think we've done pretty much every suggested topic so far. It's so there's a pretty good chance that we'll talk about your idea on the show.
Yeah, and also Mario Maker 2 comes out this week.
Oh, yeah.
Hot
So
damn.
next week, get your fill in this week to play the game because we'll be talking about it next week.
Yeah, I think next week is pretty much going to be an entire Mario Maker 2 review episode.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking all about the fun stuff we've been finding and kind of what we'll be doing with the game. I am beyond fucking hyped for that.
Yeah,
man.
me too.
I've been trying to get to bed at like normal times because my body is trained to wake up at like 6:30 since I've been in the hospital.
Don't have a kid.
Yeah, probably not. But I am definitely planning on getting Mario Maker 2 at midnight when it launches and playing for as long as I can until
Me
I fall
too,
asleep.
actually.
Yeah.
The possibilities.
Yeah, that'll be fun. But everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Where can we find all of us online?
You can find me on Twitter, Matthew, MATHYOU.
I am PDYX or PDYX123 most places.
I am at Monolith Fiji everywhere on the internet.
At Rob Gagnons, ROBGAGNONS.
Very good. You can check out all of our social media stuff for the show at Switchheads on Twitter, at Super Switchheads on Instagram and Facebook. Please join our Facebook group, which is just called Switchheads in all caps. We've been getting a lot of new members actually in the past week or so. The discussion's popping off. We're having a lot of fun.
And we got a lot of hot memes.
We got a lot of hot, juicy memes juicing, dripping down the old meme pole.
I'll advocate for the group. It's got funny stuff, but then a sale goes up, you'll know about it. Some news drops, you'll know about it. Check it out.
It's turned into quite a little community. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to the show. We can't do this without you. Share it with your friends. Give us a like and subscribe on iTunes. Other than that, we'll be talking Mario Maker 2 next week. Make sure you check in. It's going to be a hot episode.
Hype!
We love you guys. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.